Hi, and welcome back to Homebrewers Alley. We're coming down to the final part of the process for the extract IPA that we made a couple weeks ago, and today we're going to be doing the bottling part of the process, where we'll be adding the priming sugar so it can get carbonated. But before we get started, I just want to show you a couple pieces of equipment that you will probably need when you're doing bottling. Now, not all of these pieces of equipment are absolutely necessary. There are different options that you can use when bottling your beer. This is just some of the equipment that I've chosen to use, and it makes it a lot easier. One of the first piece of equipment that I use, and this is called a bottling tree, if you can kind of see this here. This is used for when you're cleaning your bottles. It makes it really easy. Basically, you will sterilize your bottles with an iodophor solution, and then you can put the bottles on here to dry. Works kind of like this, because of course you're going to need bottles. But after you clean them, they just sit up there like that, and they can drain until you're ready to use them. The type of bottles that you use for your bottling is really up to you, what size you want or the type. I'm using two different types today. I'm using a 22-ounce bomber bottle and then the regular 12-ounce beer bottle. I choose to use the brown colored bottles because it keeps the light out, which helps keeps your beer from getting skunky, whereas clear bottles and even some of the green bottles can tend to let in more light, and if it's sitting around and gets too much light, you could end up with a skunky beer, which is something that you don't want for your homebrew, especially if you're going to be serving it to friends. You also need a capper if you're capping your beers. This is what they look like. This is at least one type of capper, and it just does that, and it crimps the metal cap down over top of your beer, gives it a good tight seal. And you'll see how this works in just a little bit. Now for carbonation of the beer, I'm using just a bag of priming sugar. They come in kind of a bag that looks like this, depending on what brand you're going with. This is a 5-ounce bag. I'm not using all 5 ounces. The amount of sugar you use for carbonation is really going to depend on how much carbonation you want in your beer. It's also going to depend on what other type of ingredients you may have had in your beer. If you added additional honey or different sugars into a secondary fermentation, sometimes you might not need to use as much priming sugar. It's going to also depend on how far your gravity dropped. If you have a higher gravity, that means there's still sugars in your beer, so you might not need as much priming sugar for your carbonation process. I'm using about, I'd say about 2.5 to 3 ounces for a 5-gallon batch, and this is for an IPA. So there are calculators that you can find online for carbonation calculators, and I recommend that you look those up to give you a basic idea of what type of carbonation you're going to be going for. So now with the sugar, you want to put that in about a cup and a half of water and boil it on the stove for about, I'd say about 5 to 10 minutes, and that will get any of the impurities out of the sugar and out of the water before you add it to your beer. So I have that cooling down right now in the refrigerator to bring it down to room temperature, since I just finished with it on the stove. But what we're going to do is we're going to be transferring the beer out of the carboy now, using the auto siphon like I showed you during the transfer to secondary process, and we will transfer the beer out of the carboy into a bottling bucket, which right now I have soaking with the iodophor solution to make it sterilized before we put any beer in there. And I'll show you how that bottling bucket works in just a moment. I would suggest that you get a bottling bucket. It makes it a lot easier for when you are bottling. It has a little spout on there, and it gives you a lot of control. And they run maybe, I don't know, $15, $20 for a bottling bucket, and it'll just make it a lot easier for when you're doing your bottling process. So here we have our bottling bucket. As you can see there on the front, it's got a spout that you can just turn and then cut the pressure back off again while you're bottling. And so that makes it very handy when you're filling up your bottles with your beer. I've already now transferred the beer into the bottling bucket, and now we're going to get ready to sterilize the bottles, add the sugar, and start bottling. One other piece of equipment that's very helpful is the bottle washer. This is basically all it is. Looks kind of like this. This has a solution of water and iodophor in it that we'll clean the bottles with, and we're also going to soak the caps in this as well. Basically, got my caps here. Now I'm just going to dump some here in the bottom. I just dump some of those in to let them soak in the iodophor. while I'm cleaning the bottles. So they can just sit in the bottom like that, and they'll just be soaking in there ready for your use. I'm going to take your bottle, I'm going to swish it around a little bit and get some of the iodophor water around the outside where the cap's going to go. And then you're going to plunge it, and this is going to shoot the water up inside. And it sprays all out and drains. This will get it good and sanitized for you. And as you finish, you'll just put it on your bottling tree, just so, and let it drain while you finish cleaning the rest of your bottles. And then once you're done, you're ready to actually add the beer to your bottle. Go ahead and finish sterilizing all these bottles, then we'll add the sugar and start bottling.
Drink a drink, just one more drink, yes, have another lad. Drink away the ugly times, the loneliness you've had. Drink a drink, just one more drink, a last one to your health. Drink away your money, raise a glass to your wealth.
Alright, so our bottles are all sanitized and draining on our bottle tree. And now we're getting ready to add the sugar and start the bottling process, and we'll start that next. It's always good to imbibe a little bit while you're doing your bottling process, or any part of the brewing processes for that matter. Okay, so I've got my pan here. This has got the priming sugar that I boiled for about 5 to 10 minutes. It's now cooled down to room temperature, maybe even a little bit colder since I had the refrigerator, but it's not that cold. And now we're just going to pour this into our bottling bucket. I'm using a sterilized paddle. I've also sterilized this in an iodophor solution as usual. And we're just going to stir this in a little bit. You don't want to stir it too fast or too much because that's going to add more oxygen to the beer, and you do not want to get your beer over aerated. Because that can affect the flavor and cause some other issues, usually. So I just stirred that sugar solution in there. It's basically like a simple syrup that you're adding for carbonation. And now we're going to start the bottling process. So let's get started with that. So anyway, we're going to start with one of these 22-ounce bomber bottles that has been sterilized. And with this bucket, it's really easy. You're just going to put it up on here. And start filling your bottle and wait for it to fill up. Now you do want to leave like an inch or so for expansion room for any gases that might be left in there. You don't want to fill it to the very tip top of your bottle. And so there we have it. Now this one I let it come out a little bit fast. There's some suds up here. I'm going to let them settle, and then I'll probably bring it up to about halfway up the neck before I cap it off. And so because I let that come out as fast, that may have added more, actually most likely added more oxygen to the beer. So on this particular bottle and from here on out, I've slowed down the flow so it comes out a little bit softer, doesn't bubble up as much, and I'm not going to get as much aeration as what I did in that first bottle. So mistakes are sometimes made when you're bottling and doing any parts of the home brewing process, but it's all a learning process. So here we have a nicely bottled beer, and we're going to cap this next, and then I will continue on through the process, but I want to show you the capping first. So here we have our first 2 bottles that we have filled with our beer, and I'm just going to grab one of these caps out of here. Kind of shake off some of the iodophor solution so it's not too drippy. Just going to set that on top. See, I have this centered on the top. Going to put this down. And then you crimp it like that. So we got a good seal on this. You can pull on it. You can tell that seal all the way around. It's got a nice center. You can see the ring there. And so, first beer bottled, good and sealed. So we're going to go ahead and finish the process, and then we'll wrap this up. So we finished the bottling process, and I've got them stored in my hall closet, and I'll probably keep them there for about 2 to 3 weeks. My hall closet usually runs about 69, 70 degrees, which is a good temperature for this particular IPA to bottle condition at. And then we'll do a taste test in about 2 to 3 weeks. I did a little taste test today just to get a basic idea how the flavor was, and you can definitely taste the Cascade hops coming through. I think this beer is going to come out just fine. But I hope that today's little video gave you a basic idea of what the bottling process entails. And on future episodes, we're also going to show you how to cork your beer and also keg your beer. But that's it for today's episode. In the meantime, remember, don't worry, relax, and have a homebrew. We'll catch you next time on Homebrewers Alley. Cheers.